have fraud. And this brings back, of course, the classic Casablanca moment.
Right. Okay, the lady up here with the white sleeves and the hand up.
Always wear distinctive clothing when you come to these events.
Thank you. I'm still trying
wrap up
to
here, yeah.
understand if what you're saying is that the reason in the face of this flagrant, widespread, in-your-face fraud is cover-up. Okay, so if it's cover-up, psst, don't say anything, you'll lose your reputation. All right, that's majorly what's going on. Why can't we call that conspiratorial?
Well, what difference does it make? I mean,
Well,
anyway.
because it is. And what's wrong with calling it that? Why,
Well, I think the idea
I
would
think
be
the
to put
problem
people
is
in jail, wouldn't it?
tactical, that as soon as you say it's a conspiracy theory, you get dismissed by most folks. You don't need, let's take the savings and loan stuff, right? There were frauds all the time that were known as, I'll trade you my dead horse for your dead cow. You got to love Texans, right? And this is, I've got a really bad loan, and the pesky examiners are requiring me to recognize losses. And if they require me to recognize losses, they'll take me over, and it'll all be bad for me. And you've got a bad loan, the same thing. Well, I'll buy your bad loan, and you buy my bad loan. And we'll both buy them for above original book value. So the losses will disappear, and like an alchemist of yore, it will be transmuted into a gain. Now, those folks do meet the literal definition of a conspiracy, right? They got together and they conspired. And in fact, in Texas, there were meetings of some of these sleazoids, and they did have a common representatives, it being Texas again, right? But in another sense, none of it was necessary, right? They had a community of interest. And it's just, I'll scratch my back, you scratch my back. They didn't need to meet monthly. They got together informally in bars and such, and they had a problem, you have a problem. We all have some drinks, and we solve our problem.
Okay. I think we're coming up to the end here. This gentleman right in front here. Actually, we'll have two. You and the lady there. Him first, yes. And then I think we'll call it a day, because I know a lot of people want to talk to Bill here, but we've got to be out by 9, so.
Ian said that you were consulting for Iceland. What is the current state of it now? What's the optimistic projection? Can it provide any kind of a role model for what I anticipate we will probably be going through in another 2 years as all of these other shoes drop?
Iceland's in enormous flux. By the way, there are a couple of videos that people want to look at on YouTube and such of talks I gave and an interview in Iceland discussing these things in more depth. Iceland has got many folks willing to change. They very much fear a problem, not perhaps unique, but special to Iceland. I dubbed it the third cousin problem. And that is, it's such a small country, 300,000, that if you have a staff of 20 investigators, it's guaranteed, statistically almost, that one of them is going to be at least a third cousin of somebody you're supposed to be investigating. And I didn't raise this. This is the one that they repeatedly came back to and said, how are we going to try to fix it? So I'll say at this point, they're more open to change. They hired Madame Jolie, who probably people here haven't heard, but she investigated ELF in France, which is amazingly politically connected, and ripped it to shreds. That's a good sign. So I think we'll have to see. Their new head of supervision had me address their entire staff, but he's been in charge at the point where I talked to him, which is now 3 weeks ago, for 13 days. So I can't tell you whether it's going to work.
But they've literally hit rock bottom.
Well, all three of their biggest banks collapsed. Their three banks collectively had liabilities 10 times the GDP of Iceland.
And nobody noticed, right? Nobody noticed this happening.
Well, actually, they did, but famously, the Brit
Right.
head of the Royal Economic Society praised them.
Right. Right. Because they were attracting British customers, weren't they?
Oh, massively.
Massively. Right. Okay. The lady there, and this will be our last question.
Okay, you talked about the fact that there are not enough regulators, and I'm just wondering what regulations still exist for them to enforce. Glass-Steagall is over, the uptick on the market is no longer in existence, and you said the Community Reinvestment Act has been weakened. What are the regulations that exist at the moment, and what is Congress talking about in terms of creating more regulations?
Okay, during the crisis, they still existed all of the accounting rules that said you had to comply with generally accepted accounting principles, and none of these people complied with generally accepted accounting principles for obvious reasons. When you have massive mortgage fraud, it inherently leads to massive accounting fraud, right? That's indeed the goal. And in addition to that, banking regulators have the authority to take action against any unsafe and unsound practice. And we deliberately kept that very broad because we know any specific prohibition, it's easy to evade, right? You just put a little fillip on and it's something different. So they could have used that safety and soundness. And as a result of real reforms adopted in response to the savings and loan crisis, the banking regulatory agencies, and this included the Office of Thrift Supervision, had substantial enforcement powers to seek civil money penalties of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars to remove and prohibit officers forever from all of the banking industry, to take cease and desist orders. When I was a lead enforcement director, we had in a single year, I think it was over 800 enforcement actions in savings and loan. As you would expect, serious enforcement actions essentially ceased as long as the guy in charge is going around with a chainsaw saying that, and promoting the Daryl Dokos of the world, who was the guy that had been demoted 7 levels out of the savings and loan stuff and is brought back, and then is tossed out of the agency again when he permits IndyBac to backdate documents to make its accounting look better.
So political will is what's needed, and Obama's survival depends on it. So,
well, there are a lot of better regulators. They're experienced, effective regulators. They were, not in charge. There's no reason they can't be put back in charge.
So let us thank our guest here tonight, Bill Black.